Sato masa gamaya Maso ma jyoti gamaya Merito ma amritam gamaya Shanti
hang around you and wake it up each day. Gets you down. And with the life that you're living seems harder than maybe. But what you're needing is someone to turn your world around. Come take my hand and walk with me around. Let me teach you how to smile, and I'll show you skies but gentle breeze of love. Yeah. And I'll take you where peaceful waters flow. If you let me, I'll take you where peaceful waters flow. And walk with me. We can go where peaceful waters flow. Now if the sun shines your eyes, boy, it's time for you to realize, beyond this moment night of and if you love me, I've got you. I'll always be there, right there beside you, reaching every step of your way. Come take my hand and walk with me around. Let me teach you how to smile, and I'll show you skies where gentle breeze of love. And I'll take you where peaceful waters flow. Trust me, I'll take you there where peaceful waters
Afrika. Oh boy. Great music, but words somehow always fail to capture. But certainly, I'm glad it says really identify one of the major forms of modern dukkha. You see, there's old ancient types of dukkha, the kind of dukkha that Buddha was addressing. You have to keep in mind that that phase in human history, lifespan was short. Most people was dead by the age of 35, 40. There was no modern medicine, no hospital, so they were full of all kinds of diseases that are very curable today. There was no ingrainers and no Rose Hills. The dead bodies were laying everywhere. So there was a kind of existential suffering. There was no jobs per se. Most people was on their own to fend for themselves, from how they would eat, how they would clothe themselves. It was really toiling from sun up to sundown. A very visceral kind of suffering. But thousands of years have passed since this time, and now we live in a modern age where you don't have to go farm for your food. You can go to Jumbo, you see, and so forth and so on. Nevertheless, somehow a kind of dukkha has still persisted in spite of all of the technological advances of modernity. So Gladys touched upon a kind of dukkha that characterizes modernity, this suffering of loneliness and disconnection. And you can see this phenomenon playing out in the phenomena of digital addiction, cell phone, blah, blah, blah. People are trying to get connected, if not to other people, then at least to the internet, something. It's a kind of suffering. And the most fundamental form of that suffering is a disconnection from reality. We have lost a connection to reality. And we are trying to create all of these other kinds of pseudo-realities, mostly with our imaginations, and trying to get connected to that. There's a name for that kind of pseudo-reality. We call it Maya. When you can't connect to reality, you have no recourse but to try to hook up with Maya. And you all know what happens with that. More dukkha. So forth and so on. So this disconnect with reality, all of the various forms that disconnect manifest as the new dukkha that we confront. And the Dharma, which is timeless, when rightly applied, can disappear this dukkha too. So I thought I would just give praise to Gladys for that Dharma. All right, I'm done. What would you rascals like to consider? Yes, but
there's something that I'm struggling with. It's a cliche saying that forgiveness, and they have it said that if when you forgive somebody, it's more better for you to forgive someone. And I never understood that. So I wonder, can you give me a little bit of clarity or understanding that?
Have you tried forgiving people? Have you done the experiment to see for yourself?
I attempted to on several occasions, but I don't like hold bitterness, but some things I just can't let go. And when I try to let it go, it's a level of faith. It's not like real, so I don't want to try to attempt it because then it causes confusion or mayhem later on.
We're harboring ill will and resentment based on your perception of having been wronged. You see, destroys your peace of mind. You with me?
Yes, sir.
Like, you can't have a mind full of ill will, resentment, harsh feelings, vindictiveness, and have peace of mind. So, this is what the realizers have suggested to us. One of the questions that we have to examine is that we have this inherent capacity to forgive. And that is to be used for people who have trespassed against you. See, you want to be forgiven, don't you?
Yes, sir.
It's human, right? But you refuse to forgive others. That's not going to work, right? You have to give that which you want. This is a law of the universe. Are you with me? You probably, like most of us, have visited some of the teachings of Jesus and read some Bible and so forth. And even in our prayers, we ask, forgive us for our trespasses, right? As we forgive those who trespass against us, right? So if you are serious about being forgiven for your trespasses, if you acknowledge there is much that you have done, you see, to others, whether intentionally or otherwise, nevertheless, your life has not been perfectly moral and ethical, right? And you have caused great harm to other people. True?
Yes, sir.
You have remorse, maybe even guilt and shame on the basis of those actions, right? And you want to be forgiven, don't you?
Yes, sir.
The price of your own forgiveness is the forgiving of others. And there's no way around it. You see? So if you are serious about it, then you forgive. It's in your own best interest. You see? And you don't have to confront the person and, bless them and say, I forgive you, asshole, for what you did. That's not, that's anything. And if you don't forgive, you're just building up resentment, anger, you see, escalates. So your refusal to forgive begins to start turning into more serious mental and emotional problems. Now you're hating this person. And that begins to escalate. Now you become evil toward the person. You start developing various kinds of ideation. Are you with me? You want to hurt this person. You see, so forth and so on. So if your ambitions is to become someone that will live a spiritual way of life, then that's part of the prerequisite. You can't be spiritual with those kind of feelings toward others. You can't love others that you can't forgive. You can't even love the ones you with more than your capacity to forgive them. Interesting. Forgiveness is the sign of love. So become more loving in the true sense of the word. The rest takes care of itself. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
But there's no trick. Are you with me? So come on, acknowledge others' humanities and imperfections, because you have your imperfections as well. True?
Yes.
If all the people you have harmed took action, you'd be in a world of trouble, brother. Serious trouble. Jesus said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. It's not personal. And then who is this you that they have trespassed against other than your own ego? Are you with me? Just being defensive of your own ego. Which is a false sense of self in the first place. You're not even that which can be offended and trespassed. So there's a lot of things that go into that. Like your sponsors, right, the law and country, just settle down, 7 hours and have them. There's so much more to say. I don't want to cross it, but they will certainly be willing to, I'm sure, walk you through that process. And you can then be convicted that forgiveness is the only way to go. It's the only way to live life and have life more abundantly. Otherwise, you would have to go see Sap Rock, He's retired, but he's gonna charge you twice. Something else to say about it, brother?
No, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, brother.
What does it look like to forgive somebody so that you don't trick yourself into thinking forgiving somebody, it's not real?
It's a feeling. It's like if you're wearing a shoe that is a size too small, you can feel the discomfort of it, right? And when you take that shoe off, you can feel the release from that pressure and that pain and so forth and so on. So, beloved, it's more like that. Are you with me? The act of genuine forgiveness is self-evident. You see, it's a felt experience. You see, you won't have to think about it. You see, you will feel it. You will feel it at the level of the body, at the level of the mind, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You see? Because when it's not authentic, you see, there's always some debris left. You see, it's not authentic. You still think about it. You see, you still think about it. You ruminate about it. You try to somehow or another give yourself a kind of rationalization to act on it. You see my point? They do it one more time, et cetera, and so forth. So there's no peace, fundamentally. You can't have peace of mind like that. Right? And you won't feel that peace, you see. So if it's an intimate relationship, see, and you can't forgive your beloved, see, then you don't have no peace of mind. You're just walking around the house not talking, shit like that. You see what I'm saying? Sleeping on the couch. You know how that goes, right? You're not comfortable. You're not happy in the small sense of the word, right? You're diseased. There's no ease there. So you can feel it. So how do you go from false forgiveness to the real deal? And that's a matter of understanding. You see. It's a real kind of understanding you have to have that. You see. That's a kind of spiritual level of unity. You see. That's why we struggle so much with the moral and ethical disciplines that's associated with any authentic spiritual process, because we lack the spiritual maturity, you see. So something in us have to grow up. Are you with me? Psychologically and so forth and so on. If you look at it very closely and you try to interpret what are the psychodynamics that really produce this unwillingness to forgive, you will find very often you are angry at and unwilling to forgive people who don't do what you want, when you want, how you want it. You can't get your way. But that's a kind of childish disposition. Are you with me, beloved? So you have to grow up. And then Jesus said, put away your childish ways and all of the expectations that accompany that kind of childish way of thinking. You see, you're not going to always get your way. And you will be angry and unforgiving every day of your life. Because there is no day that you will have where something won't go your way. I stumble sometimes. And thus you have no real peace. But there's even a deeper level that we could go to. Where all these deep questions coming from? You have to begin to look at your life. See, what kind of human being do you want to be? Come on, you have to begin to explore that. You see. Do you want to be a bitter, grudge-holding, you see, type of individual? And you have to begin to really explore those kind of things. So maybe you have to revisit what does it mean to be a spiritual person. We come onto the spiritual path, we say we're on the spiritual path. I mean, what does all that mean? Perhaps there may be some value in that kind of exploration to whatever degree and whatever time we have today. But what do that really mean? You see, we talk about meditation, okay, but what really is meditation? You know, what is all that really about? You know, these are kind of perennial questions that you have to ask yourself. They're like the same level of inquiry that informs who am I, what am I, you know, that kind of big child. These things, kind of person you want to be. Addicted, all of that, and grudge holding. It's almost a kind of arrogance going on, kind of vanity, you see, like you better than other people. What kind of nonsense is this? Golden rule does not apply for you. You see, do unto others as you wish others to do unto you. You're not governed by that. You see, you want to do whatever the hell you want to do, no matter how much suffering it cause other people. But you don't want other people to treat you like you treat other people. You don't understand the law. You see, you don't understand the law. You're going to get treated just like other people treat you, especially in these intimate relationships. Something else, beloved, you can say about it? Oh, no. Say, beloved.
I'm back. Master Bhagwan,
Yes, beloved.
you sort of cleared up a few things that I was pondering about. But I think, in fact, I know. No, I'm not, that's how you go. I forgive people in various things, but it's not reciprocation. Yeah, so I get angry that I forgave them.
Yeah. It's unfair.
And by the way, I apologize because the phone call I received, and it was part of that.
Yes,
So I apologize for the rudeness.
yes, no, that's all right. No, but you see, beloved, you don't forgive others to be forgiven by others. That doesn't become your motive. You forgive others as an act in your own behalf. Because if you don't forgive, you forfeit your peace of mind. You're holding on to all of that. You see, the Buddha said that clinging to this resentment is like holding a hot coal in your hand. You're just burning yourself. It's not affecting the other person. So you're angry at the other person. You pissed off. You hate their guts, right? And you laying awake at night. You stay up to figure out what you're going to do to get even. You can't sleep, nothing, right? Causing turning, right? Blood pressure, you up and all that.
Right.
The stomach gets churning. You got to go take a shit every day. And this person fast asleep somewhere. They're not affected at all by your mental turmoil. You're the one suffering because you're holding on to dukkha. You see, you actually creating your own dukkha by this clinging. And so you do that, you see, as a part of spiritual hygiene. Are you with me? You're taking care of your soul. Are you with me? And that's your motive. Are you with me? You're not doing it for praise. You're not doing it for recognition, not even reciprocation necessarily. Are you with me? So that must be your underlying intention and motivation, you see. This is in your best spiritual interest, even your best physical interest, your health, you see. Because you're just building up all that stress in your body, you see. All kinds of things goes on. So this is something that has been taught across all cultures, across all time, across all traditions. There's no tradition, no time in human history where you will hear any other instruction coming from realizers of this law, right? So even in the Kemetic spiritual tradition, these 42 negative confessions, you see, Pepe practiced it to the point where he said, I won't even make any other people afraid of me. Because that too would damage your soul. 42 of them, and I won't go through all of that, you're sophisticated, but even in Christianity, 10 Commandments, I mean, you see it everywhere, you see? If you have any serious intentions to become the spiritual person you want to be, you have to be able to forgive. You have to have those fundamental spiritual abilities, you see. You won't have the ability to do much of all of the other things that is associated with Sodom if you can't forgive. You see, it's much more difficult to steal the mind than it is to forgive somebody. Are you with me?
Yes.
So you want to leapfrog over all of that, go right to, you want to sit for 12 hours, you don't want your mind to stray, this is not going to happen.
Yes, I noticed.
Because your attention will keep going to that because you're holding on to it. You're sitting there, you're trying to do it, oh, I hate this bastard. Next time I just kicked his ass. Ain't gonna.
Yes.
You'll be worried, why won't they forgive me? Why won't they forgive me? You know? And this is where your attention is. You can't take your attention off of your feelings of having this wrong.
Yeah.
How would you move your attention to a monitor or those kind of things? So there's no way around it. It's not an option. And that's just one. Forgiveness is just one. You follow me? I mean, there are many others, but for some reason, this rascal over here has started the whole battle of evil against goodness, compassion against revenge. You know what I mean? But you do understand that you love it.
Oh, yes, sir.
Jesus says again that of all of the commandments, the greatest one is love of your neighbor. You see, and that's the task of spiritual life: to be the agency of love, no matter what. That whole teaching of turning the other cheek is very profound. You see my point? You mean you're a coward or something? You see, it's an inner thing. Are you with me? And it's necessary. You know? Okay, your cousin got a question. Hey,
I had to follow. And then I let it go.
yes, beloved.
Master, what are some of the stages, what are some of your work? And I was enlightened just by scanning through it. I just purchased this book today, it helped. And it was almost as if it was plans. Because when you started talking, you were talking about me. What are some of the stages of spiritual development?
Okay. And that has been outlined, beloved, really in so many texts and so many different traditions. But they all have a kind of universal thread that runs through them, you see. The first one is what we were just talking about, the moral and ethical life, you see. Because spiritual growth and development and all of this enlightenment and self-realization and God-realization that we are seeking requires a certain kind of life, a certain kind of way you are living is required. Are you with me? And so in all of these great traditions, it starts with building up a moral and ethical foundation. It's like the foundation in this building, you see? You can't raise it on mud, you see? You follow what I'm saying? It has to be solid. So there has to be a solid foundation to raise a spiritual life and practice upon. And in different traditions, they have different ways of wording it, but it all comes down to the same thing. For instance, in the culture of yoga, everybody want to do yoga, but Patanjali Maharaji in the Yoga Sutras has laid down a whole different foundation for that, you see? And the first part of that is what they call yamas. You see, there's yamas and niyamas. And I won't exhaust that, but the point is that the yamas are the kind of behavior you must cultivate in your interaction with other people, because you're creating a lot of karma here. You see? Just because you don't understand karma, don't mean karma cease to apply to you. Are you with me? You see? So, since you got to interact with other people, you have no option here, right? So how to interact with other people in a way that minimizes your creating bad karma for yourself. So they talk about the yamas. You see, ahimsa. You see? Ahimsa means non-violence, harmlessness. See, that's hard to practice when you're full of revengeful feelings and vindictiveness and feelings of you want to kick their ass and you want to get even. It's going to be hard for you to do ahimsa. You see my point? You're going to become himself. You're going to become violent, not argumentative, right? If not in deed, then in thought. Even if you don't act upon it, you're in your mind, you're visualizing it. You see, you hear in yourself, cuss them out. You go to your mouth. You follow?
Yes, sir.
So, ahimsa, you see? And that ahimsa is a thread that runs through all of the other various forms of moral and ethical practices in the development. They all are on that string of ahimsa, harmlessness. Harmlessness, you see?
Yes, sir.
So, That's where it begins. And then there's niyamas, right? These are things you have to do, your own inner work. Are you with me? You see, so to purification of your mind. You see, you're trying to purify your mind of anger and ill will. But if you're not practicing, you're clinging to it, you know? When you say, I can't let go, you're contributed to the purification of your own mind. There's no socha there. I mean, Sermon on the Mount, pure in heart, right? They shall what? See. Now you clinging and further polluting your mind, and you still trying to see God. This is not going to work. Blessed are the pure in heart. True. True.
Well,
Why don't y'all sit next to each other?
no, because,
I'm only messing with you.
see, the approach of this particular spiritual path, one has to meditate. Now, when I meditate, maybe I got this false reality when I meditate, that it'd be this perfect quiet place. But then these thoughts come up. And it's a mass and like it comes up and it feels like, oh, I've been lying the whole time, like about my emotions and my feelings. And then I try to go get to a book, don't do nothing.
Yes.
And then I hit the mat again, and it's still these past experiences, emotions. And like, you know, I ain't moved a step, but I did all this, and I'm like, and I can't get no books to even to describe. I'm trying to pull out all this, and I'm like, and I gotta sit down. It's like, but then these past experiences and things that you think is just
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, beloved, you have adequately and eloquently described the experience everybody's in here who attempted to meditate is having after years.
Yes, sir.
After years. A part of that is because, see, here in the West, we have a very different concept of what meditation is. You see, normally in Western culture and psychology and so forth, when we say meditate, what we really are saying, just think about a thing, think about it, think about it, think about it. It's more like a manana, where you reflect, contemplate. That's not meditation. That's contemplation, that's thinking about it. It has its place, no misunderstanding, but that's not meditation. You see? Now, if you go in the East, you see the word in the Sanskrit language is dhyana, or zichang in Chinese spiritual tradition, or Zen, or so forth and so on. That's a very different practice. That is a practice of stilling the thinking process. Are you with me? You have to understand is that our thinking activity is about the past or about the future. That's what we call your mental default. You see, that's your default position. And that's what's going on. Past, future. Not just at the time of meditation, it's going on now. Past, future, tick, tock, click, clack, tick, clack. Your thinking is click, clack. Just swinging from past to future, and it's habituated. Now, you're walking around in that click-clack mind state, are you with me? Totally disconnected from reality. You can't be connected to reality in this click-clack disposition and mode of mind. It cannot happen, you see? And that's what we were talking about just a few minutes ago. Therefore, you feel disconnected because you are disconnected. Are you with me? You're not present right now. And you're not present because you don't have enough awareness to be present. Because your awareness is in the past, is in the future. Your awareness is in the past, is in future. Therefore, there is no awareness right here, right now. Are you following me?
Yes, sir.
So when you sit in meditation, you see, you have no awareness. You don't have enough awareness to focus on the object of your meditation. You can't quiet the mind. See, the mind is not quiet. You see. And why is the mind becoming quiet so important? Because your intention in doing your meditation is to transform yourself. Now, you confess that in spite of all the stuff you read and heard, fundamentally, you have not been transformed. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
And that's the whole point. If what you call meditation is not transforming you, then you must conclude by evidence you're not anywhere close to doing any meditation. You're not transformed. See? And this is the truth. So that's one of the purpose of these techniques, japa, mantra, visualization, so forth and so on, is to get rid of some of this chatter going on in your head. Are you with me? This constant chatter in your head, what we call compulsive thinking disorder. Compulsively thinking about the past or the future. Click-clacking. You see? That's the fundamental default mode that we operate on. In the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali defines yoga, which includes meditation, right? It says yoga, right? Chitta vedite nirodha. Meditation is the cessation of all this thinking. You see? Now, I'm not against thinking, don't misunderstand me, right? It has its place, but when you have no control over your thinking, your thinking becomes your master, and you become his slave. It's a good servant, bad master. You with me? So you have to bring all this compulsive thinking about the past and into the future. That has to stop. You see? The mind has to be quiet. All that really means is that all this chattering. You see? Like the past keeps texting you. If you texting, you know what I mean? The mind texting you. You know what I mean? It's like that. We call it vishepa, distraction. So you are so distracted in your own attention, right, that you're never present. Because all your attention is in your thinking of the past. That's what you do. Are you following my argument? I'm glossing this, of course, but I wanted to try to give you some insight, you see. So this confusion between reflection and meditation has to be understood. Although reflection has a role, are you with me? And part of that reflection should include your reflecting on this default mode. So you have to observe, you see, are you operating out of a default mode of mind? So see that. Otherwise, you won't be moving. And you'll never be present. And thus you will always be disconnected. You see? So even as we are having this conversation, you see, we can look at each other and look like we're present with each other, but in our mind is all over the place. Put that name in, but This thing goes. Had to go, you know. I mean, I only got 10 more minutes to be here.
This is what goes on.
This is good. And so a lot of this preoccupation with this past future thinking, you see, itself is grounded in a more profound problem of ignorance. Are you with me? Past don't exist no more. Future don't exist. There's nothing existential about either dimension. There's only the right now, right here. So when you're in the past and you're out in the future, you're in the realm of Maya somewhere. Are you with me? And you don't thrive, you see. Even this body is right here, right now. You see? Your mind is somewhere else. You see? The unconditional reality that is unfolding before you is right here, right now. You're somewhere else. You see? You have eyes, but you really can't see what's going on because you're looking back in the past, into the future. You can't see. Jesus says, you neither see nor hear. Because you're not here. You're in the past. You're in the future. Neither exists. Right now. Right here. And the purpose of meditation is to tap down all of that thinking of past and future and free up your attention so that you can pay attention. Are you with me? Can't pay attention if your attention is not present. There's no awareness. So there has to be awareness. And then you have to be able to act out of that awareness, which is another problem, okay? You see, because you got all of these contrary tendencies that you have developed because you have been functioning out of this default mode of mind, which is about the past future thinking, and that's some scar and that's a tendency in you, right? So those got to be overcome. There's more work involved, are you with me? Yes. So, but once you have that, now you got to decide, now, what I'm going to do with my life? Intention, with an I. So you got to get attention and then have an intention now. You see? So what would you do with your life? See, these are fundamental questions. I mean, they're right up there with who am I? You see? Why this world exists? Is there a God? How did all this come into being? How is all this shit working? You understand? These are deep inquiries and questions. Are you with me? So what will you do with your life? What will you devote your lifetime endeavoring to? Seriously. There's a lot of things you can do with it. What, among all those things you can do with your life, would be the best use of your life? What is your intention? Are you living with any intention? You see? Are you on purpose here? Or you just, flying by the seat of your pants here? Okay. How would you make your life meaningful? Are you even trying to make your life meaningful? I mean, what's your intention? And do you have enough awareness to fulfill that intention? You see? Or are you absent, like so many of us, from your own Your life is right now, right here. You breathe right now, right here. You see? Heart is beating right now, right now. You see? But you're in the past somewhere, you're in the future somewhere, you're not even alive. You see? Technically. You see, spiritually speaking, you're dead. You see? You're not here. So how will you do this love and compassion and all this other stuff? It's not easy. You have to see what kind of person you are. It may not be the kind of person you even want to be. I don't know if I said even go into this, okay? But the reality is that you're not who you think you are. Are you with me? Even now, I'm just talking in a real basic sense now, you know, in terms of personhood. You see, the kind of person you are. There's different kind of persons. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
And every goal requires that you be the kind of person that is required in order to fulfill that goal. Are you with me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So let's say that you have this high spiritual goal, but are you the kind of person that the attainment of that high spiritual goal requires, right? Let's say your goal is you want to be a billionaire, right? That's your goal, right? But are you the kind of person, do you have the kind of qualities and so forth and so on, the talents, the competence to be that, right? Well, you don't like working, you want to sleep all day, there's no kind of money, you know what I mean? You're strung out on heroin somewhere. I mean, you're not even the kind of person that I don't want to keep repeating this. This shit can get depressing. But that's the reality.
Yes, sir.
And this is the reality it teaches. Fundamentally. Every goal requires a certain type of person in order for that goal to be attained. And you're fantasizing about the kind of person you are, don't change the reality of the kind of person you are. Are you with me? You just wind up deluding yourself, deceiving yourself. Are you with me? So, there is in Hindu philosophy, as well as in other philosophy, I hate to sometimes keep going into the Hindu system, but it's known better than the ancient African system. Most people don't even know that anymore, so it doesn't serve our purpose fully here. But certainly in every culture, somehow or another, there is this classification of goals, right? They call them the goals of human beings, that human beings have, right? And they've given them names, and Eastern traditions, which incidentally are derivative from the Kemetic traditions. Are you with me? But they did a better job of preserving them.
Yes, sir.
They did a hell of a job of the preservation. You see, because those Kemetic teachings came over to the Indus Kush Valley, right? That's what India is, Kush, you know, Kush, right?
Yes, yes.
Indus Kush. And they were very well preserved. And so a lot of the Kemetic wisdom tradition, you see, found its way into the Indus Kush Valley, you see. A lot of the other stuff that was in the libraries, well, that got destroyed, you know. When the Romans went into Alexandria, they just stirred up all of that stuff. Timbuktu has a little bit of it, but you see, unintelligible to the modern scholar. Anyway, coming back to this kind of topology of persons and the goals. So one of the goals, beloved, is what they call karma, K-A-M-A, not karma, but karma, right? And karma is where your goal in life, your intention, what you want to use your life for, is to have as much sensual gratification as possible. You see, it's devoted, you want pleasurization, you see, of the body, right? It can be summarized as money, food, sex, bodily comfort. You follow what I'm saying? Just indulgences, sensual indulgences, pleasurization. That's karma. Are you with me? And you will find many people, that's their principal goal. We'll get to that later, but let me outline the goals. That characterize most human beings. Right? The next one is what they call artha. Wealth, money, power, fame, influence, to be important. Some people have devoted their whole lifetime to trying to be important, trying to be an expert in this, expert in that. You know what I mean? You see, so forth and so on. And then there's what they call dharma. You see, these are basically people that want to be good human beings. You see, you have to realize a lot of y'all don't even want to be a good human being. Is that about right? You don't want to be no good human being. You see, but there are people who really want to be a good human being more than they want to be famous, more than they want to have power, more than they want to be able to just gratify all of their senses and so forth and so on. They really want to be a good, decent, first-class human being. See, that's Dharma. Then there are those who are the rarest in number, want what they call moksha, liberation, realization. So set that to the side now. Follow me? Now, coming into it and looking at this from a psychological point of view, all right? You have certain psychosocial needs, psychological needs, you see. And what some people have a greater need for is what we call certainty, security, certainty. See, if you can't be certain about it, guaranteed that it's going to come out the way you want it to be, you can't get with that. Are you with me? Because it's got to be certain. You need to feel certain. Security. You know, these are variations of Adlerian needs in Adlerian psychology. We won't spend a lot of time on it, right? But you need to start getting this kind of sense of what kind of person you are, you see. The person's fundamental psychological need is for this certainty, absolute certainty, and security, and safety, right? You don't have a high tolerance for risk. You see, you can't risk nothing. Got to be straight. Right? Then there's another type, which is just the opposite. Right? They need variety, spontaneity. You see, they like to explore. You know, they like, let's just wing it. Are you with me? Just be excited. You see. Bad if y'all married to each other, but it's this side goes, you see. So they're more spontaneous. You know, it's like you and Shirley decide you're going to go on a trip, right? Now, she's that person that has to be psychologically sure. You got the ticket? Got the ticket? What are the tickets at? You got the passports? You know what I mean? Right? She got all that stuff laid out 2 weeks before. She's packed already. And you're the type that come home from work, it's 6:30, and you just decide, maybe let's get in the car, let's go somewhere. Baby, can we? Let's go, right? Well, where are we going? Well, do I need to pack? Do y'all understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. not spontaneous. Then there's people whose greatest psychological needs as a person, right? Because you have to remember, the kind of person you are will shape the kind of expectations you bring to the path in the first place. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Right? So if you, that hyper certain seeker of certainty, then you won't poop before you meditate, you know what I mean? Well, I started changing around my lifestyle, you know, I know this gonna work. Try it. Now, you gotta show me how it works before I try it, you see? Then there's a kind of third type of quality that characterizes the kind of person you are. Now, some people, they just want significance is important. They want to be significant. They want to make sure that they get credit for what they do. Are you with me? We're on the team, right? And I want to make sure I get credit for my contribution, you know, to us getting that big contract. You know what I mean? They want significance. They want to be important. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Now remember, I'm not judging any of these as wrong or right. This is just these archetypes of the kind of person you are. And when they don't get that validation of their significance, you know what I mean? It creates turmoil in them. You don't have to be a great thing. It's just, you know, knowledge. I had something to do with this too. Significant. Now, on the pathological, this is a person that just want to be important. Even if they made no damn contribution, they want to be important. You see, they want to be the boss. Right? Important. They want to be seen as extraordinary. You see? Significance, importance, acknowledgement, recognition. Those are the kind of social needs they have. We already talked about our fourth type is connection, right? People want to be connected to something. Connected to a family, to a gang, or something, but they got to be connected, because if you're not connected, then you're in that void, you feel lonely, right? So you got to get connected to something, a part of. She wants me to do them all, but I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated. Because, you know, your mind can only hold so much, right? And I'm reaching a point where the tea is going to start just spilling all over the floor. So let me go back. If you want the remaining seeker, let her do some work. Right? So, you got these goals now, right? Let's say a little bit about the type of person you are, right? So forth and so on. Now, people that come to the path, right? They bring their goals, they bring the type of person they are, right? Now, you may be thinking that you are this high spiritual, you know, Mirabai, Kabir, and all of that stuff. I've been reading a lot of books, you know. You know, I'm just like Rumi. No. You ain't just like Rumi. You see? Me and Buddha got a lot in common. No. You and Buddha had nothing in common. You see? So, when you get here, you come already packaged. different kind of people come. The first type that I want to talk about is what they call in the tradition Pamai. The Pamai goal of those 4 goals is karma and Afrika. That's it. They don't have any goals beyond that. They come and you want to give them Dharma. They come in, these are people who are only interested, you see? And money, food, sex, bodily comfort, blah, 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 you see? They aren't interested in that stuff. You might be married to one or have one of your kids may be one, so they're everywhere. You can't see? Yeah. This is where they're at.
Yes, sir.
Right? They're trying to find something to eat, see, touch, taste, smell that'll give them the feeling of pleasure and gratification, and this is what they after. Are you with me? This is their goal in life, you see? So you telling them that you gotta drop that stuff. Man, you see what it may come once or twice, but you know, that's about it. You see? Because that's their fundamental psychosocial need for that kind of thing. Like, karma, atra. That's what it is. You see? There's another type that'll come through the door, and we have called them the Vasai. Now the Vasai, in some sense, is similar to the Pamai, in that they too have as their fundamental goal karma and artha, but one additional one. They want to make money and all of that, but they want to do it morally and ethically. You see? See, the Pamai is not operating out of no morality and ethics. They just want pleasure and they want money and all that stuff by any means necessary. Like, you know, if you can show me how I can sell drugs and get this money, and I don't care how many people lie at the store, I don't give a damn. My focus is on this, right? You follow what I'm saying? So there's no moral factor involved in their pursuit of karma and artha at all. Whereas the Vasai, they want the same things, but they want to make their fulfillment of those things in a moral and ethical way. They have Dhamma. Are you with me?
Yes.
They want to do it the right way. Right? Yeah, I want to make a lot of money, but I ain't willing to get out there and sling drugs. You see? Blah, 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 blah. Y'all all right? There's a lot of stuff here. Then there is another person that comes through the door, right? Who probably have been one of the prior types of persons, right? And they went through that, but they evolved through experience, and they said, man, this ain't it, that ain't about it. Yeah, you know, I made a lot of money. You follow what I'm saying? And that didn't work. I'm still contemplating suicide. I got suicide issues, you know? I indulged the body. I've been everywhere, I traveled everywhere I went, I ate everything I wanted. I'm still, you see my point? Right. And their whole thing is that I've been moral, I've been ethical, but you know, just being moral and ethical, being a good person, that ain't enough. You know what I mean? You see? Like you were saying, I treat everybody fairly, I forgive everybody, I follow the golden rule to the best of my ability, but they treat me bad. You see my point over there, and appreciate it, blah, blah, blah. Didn't do that. That's not it either. These are what they call the sadhakas. They're the ones that do sadhana, you see. So sadhakas, sadhana, clearly they come from the same root word, obviously, right? And that word is sahans. Sahans means your goal. You see my point? Their goal is most so, right? No longer to be confined to these lesser purposes for which to use their life. None of that is enough. They want something more than this stuff now, right? Whole different kind of person. Are you with me? Mhm. And they have this tendency even before they come through the door, because you look back over their life, you will see it. You see? Sadhakas. You see? And then they engage in the sadhana in order to feel the sadhana, the goal, the person, the process. They do sadhana. You see my point? Not because they are naive, they done did all this stuff. They know what this is all about. Are you with me? You see my point? If you haven't made $10 million, then you don't know what happens when you make $10 million. You got all this imagination about it. Are you with me? Yes, sir. You project all kinds of things on having wealth. You see, so forth and so on. You didn't have no children, you get 3 or 4. You see, all that stuff you project about how happy you're going to be disappears. Right? Get married, get some children. You know what I mean? All that you go through in the man. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Get your careers, get you a couple of PhDs, and get you some fame and recognition. And so they done been through all that stuff. See, they know it's not exactly. So solid. And then that's a process, that's a discipline, and you all know all about that, might take you the rest of your life, you see, but once you have perfected your sadhana, then you become a siddha. You see, the siddha. So you can start at the level of the pamayi, the visayi, you see, the sadhaka, the siddha. Each person comes like that. So you can, right? And so in Kemetic wisdom tradition and all of the traditions, to some extent, you got to know yourself. Even if you can't know your real self, know your false self. That's a good deal, right? But you got to know something about you, even if that you is imaginary. You need to know there's an imaginary sense of self, but you got to look at it. And so, meditation and all of these things that you were inquiring about, love, is part of that whole process. But technically, it's probably the santika that is probably more likely to succeed, right? You can understand that, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, you can be given the techniques and the initiation, but when you sit, all you're going to think about is money, food, sex, how to eat, how can I get important, what should I do to increase, you know what I mean? So, a lot more can be said here. What else you would would like to consider? So, you were very patient there. You were making a lot of progress.
I had a question.
Yes,
We'll go to it because I almost forgot it because it was really interesting going through this path. But I'm sitting here and I'm trying to tie all the conversations together, at least for so I can simplify this. And this conversations and priors over the years. And it seems to me, and I'm looking for some verification or on what you're talking about, but as we're sitting and meditating, and the mind is contemplating the past, which does a lot, or forecasting the future, or harboring unforgiveness, or issues that we just have, it seems to me that the mind is attached to these concepts and won't let go, right? My question is I know detachment is the key, right? But the big word is how, right? Because that's the magic. If that could happen, and all that dissolves away, then staying present and focused becomes attainable, right? So that's, maybe you can speak a little, is that kind of right?
Yeah, that's what it actually becomes in terms of our actual experience, right? That's because of the momentum, that has built up over this lifetime and perhaps many other lifetimes, you see. And that is what makes it a challenge. You see. Now, let's start with a short answer first. If you understand this pre-existing momentum, you see, and pattern of your thinking, being this past, future, you see, et cetera, right? Then the practice itself becomes very simple. You know from the get-go that when you sit down, it's gonna run out. Bring it back. It's gonna run out again. Bring it back. It's gonna run out again. Bring it back. It's gonna run to the past, it's gonna run to the future, it's gonna run to some concern, some attachment, you see? It's gonna run. That's to be factored in. Are you with me? And so you don't freak out, right? You bring it back, you bring it back, you bring it back, you bring it back. The more you bring it back, you see, the more you deprive it of fuel. See? If it goes out and then you sit there and you start crying, I remember my man ran out of No, you giving it fuel. Just like that is the practice. That's the beginning of the practice, you see, and you persevere, you keep doing that. How long it will take you depends on your own momentum. Are you with me? You see? But that's the practice, you see. Now, one of the other things that helps me get out of this dilemma, right, is what they call Afrika, right? You examine it, you see, this whole thinking thing, you see. You have to have a different attitude now toward this thinking, because you follow me? You presume that your thinking, right, is what your thinking is not capable of doing, and so forth and so on. You have a lot of faith in your thinking and all of that kind of stuff. Are you with me? So this is what has been referred to as compulsive thinking, you see. It's the compulsive thinking. We're not saying all thinking, because Bhavika is itself a kind of thinking, but it's clear. You follow me? It's right here, right now type of thinking. The thinking we're doing, that's not, technically, it's not even thinking. You see my point? The thinking we do that is problematic, that's not Bhavika. Are you with me? That's what we call discursive thought. It's just all over the place. You see, the shepherd just in you. You see? It's not Bhavika. It's just discursive thinking. So you have to reframe your whole attitude toward thinking has to change. You see? Are you following me, beloved? All that thinking you're doing, most of it is totally unnecessary in the first place. Right? Most of the thinking we're doing is just reinforcing our own egoic advantage. It's not in your service. You see? So there's a term called, sampatis, you see, sampatis. One of those is about focus, you see. It's like you ever play sports? Yeah. So in sports, there's a phenomenon called being in the zone. You know what I mean? When you're in the zone, you see, all of that peripheral thinking is gone, right? Because most of our thinking is peripheral, it's not focused nowhere. This unnecessary level of thought and thinking has to be tapped down. Right? And the way you tap down is every time it runs out, you bring your attention out of it. With the right attitude, the right understanding. Otherwise, you don't want to let go of the thinking. See, there's a kind of thinking that happens when we sit and meditate called manaraja, right? That's where you're sitting and thinking and you're reflecting on, man, you know, that was a good talk, or boy, I just read this Panchadasi, and you're going over all the things in the Panchadasi that you read in the Bhagavad Gita. And you know, you're enjoying this review. Because that's what you like. See, there's a raga, you like that. But the practice is you bring it out, right? You bring it out, you see. So our biggest struggles is usually bringing our attention out of that pattern of thinking that is distracting us, but we like thinking about that. Are you with me? I like thinking about, I just made $10,000. What I can do with that. You sit there, you're going to do this. We going to, you know, Bora Bora. You know? And I'm going to see this, and I'm going to go see that. I'm going to go see this little village. I heard a lot about that, you see? Or you know, Kodishetta, not even on the battlefield. Our journal was very interesting. I mean, you all know. You enjoy it. See, there's some kinds of thinking you enjoy. You love thinking. The older you get, the more you love thinking about that past. Not so much this future, because I got a pretty good idea of what's in the future. I ain't into this future stuff. And so you see that as we get older, we become more nostalgic. You know, I used to do that. You know, I go talk to my daddy. My daddy go all the way back to when he was a basketball star. Oh, you know he fried. And how the girl used to follow him around. You know? Because that's, you know, you get a hit. So as you age, that mode, your default mode, tends to become more grounded in the past. When you're young, because when you're young, man, ain't got no money, ain't got no house, nothing. So you tend to be more into the future. Are you with me? So you see adolescents and stuff like that, they're more into the future. You know what I mean? They're not. You see, so hung up on. What has happened? What has happened? What, 10 years ago they were 10, there was 5. Yeah. They think about the future, how I'm gonna make that money before I'm 30 and buy a mansion and all of that. I mean, that's what they, y'all understand me? Yes. The thing is to see where you at. You see, and see the motive for it. So that's the attachment, you see. You're much more attached, you see, to this reminiscing, right? You go on a vacation, right? And all this stuff, and we take pictures, right? And so when we get back, and we over dinner, we look at our pictures and see how, man, I really enjoyed that place we went to here, see, honey? You know what I mean? So you get to the next picture. You understand? So even when you went there, you didn't enjoy it as much as when it became the past.
Yeah.
True?
Yeah.
Put your little mementos. I bought this at that little shop. You look at it. I remember when I bought that at the shop. This is how it is. All right? This is how it is. So that's ragas, right? You see, and so forth. You see, you're the best in the future. You know what I mean? So you can get occupied with that, you know. as you get older, you know, like, man, you know, this morning I got dizzy when I stood up. I got a bigger doctor appointment. So you just think about something else now. The fear takes over, right? Because you're getting closer and closer to that which you really been scared of all your damn life. And it's closing in on you. So you preoccupied with that one. You know what I mean? It's like that. You see? Sort of like that. You get the point? Yes. All of that is a challenge. You see? All of that, beloved, is a challenge. You see? And you have to just bring your thinking out of both your ragas and your devasas. Think about it. Doesn't matter whether your thinking is giving you a hit or your thinking is getting shit out of you. Bring your attention out and go bring it back. 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 You see? You see? Cause in the right here, right now, you're not in Jamaica and you're not in the morgue. Most of the problems you have are in the past or in the future.
Right.
What problem you got here? Your belly is full. You see? You ain't dizzy now, hopefully. You're okay.
Yes, sir.
The present is always okay. Right here, right now. It's all right. You see? Not that many problems. You see? Sort of like that. Sort of like that. Something else to say about it, beloved? Now again, I apologize. All right. There's Sagyani. You have to see it. You have to live. Okay.
Something Bhagwan, Mr. Bhagwan. One question. Chronic, excessive worrying about things, can that cause certain diseases such as heart disease, certain types of cancer?
All kinds of stuff. You see? There's a real, and we won't have time to really go into that dimension, but there's a real neurobiology and a real neurophysiology that happens. You see, mind-body, psychosomatic, mind-body. It's the mind-body complex. Are you with me? You see, what happens in one affects the other part. You see, it does all kinds of things. You see, one of the things that that mode of mind that is subject to compulsive and obsessive worrying, right? That mind drains a lot of energy. You see, the body is an energy system, right? And unless you really raise your kundalini, you ain't got that much energy to be messing around with worrying every 5 minutes about this and that. That drains the energy. Now, there's no energy available for some of the other activities of the body, right? Follow me? So 70% of your energy that you get from food is used in the digestion of the food itself. So you done worried yourself into an ulcer. Right? Because you set in motion all kinds of hormones and chemicals that this body be creating. Are you with me? You see, right? You see, stress hormones and so forth. You see, it's increased in the body, right? Because you worry. Yeah. And usually that's fear. Right? And fear is the result of a thought process. It's a kind of result of the way you think, right? And fear always makes you a controlling person. So now a lot of your thinking is what I can do to protect myself from what I fear happening, right? You're very controlling. I mean, it's a bad trip. Both psychologically and physically. It doesn't work right. Okay. So yes, the answer is yes. I used to say that worrying mode of thinking is absolutely useless because your worrying has no effect on the thing, on anything. It's the most useless kind of thinking you can ever indulge in. Worry. It does nothing. See, does nothing. Totally disconnected from the reality of those. Nothing. You see? So, the antidote for that is rather faith. Faith and trust is what keeps you out of that pathological mode. Otherwise, you worry yourself. We have the cliche, worry to death. Right? True. I know people, you probably had some in your practice, they done worry themselves into near-death conditions, done worry themselves till they're sick. And I mean sick. Worrying produces all kinds of sicknesses in the body. Crazy. You can worry yourself and create a kind of depression that will put you in an asylum somewhere. True? Don't worry, be happy. Don't worry, you know. It's a sacrifice of serenity. It's a destruction of your own peace. You see? Why do that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Much more can be said. It's a good question. Much more can be said. So, analogy, and then who else we have here? We'll wrap up. I think, Sardenta, did you get your question asked?
No.
Give Sardenta his first tonight. He's very sensitive. Okay.
Okay, my question is, what kind of person, what do you do when you have a sense of obligation to, like, help the world, or change the world, and when you observe things that are going on, for people that don't have a sense of or connection to anything spiritual, that all they understand are facts or the illusion of what's happening in the world.
So when you say the type of person you are, like an activist, or
Yes.
that kind of
Exactly.
a thing? Well, it depends on what you're acting out of. And that's important. Like, if you have first recouped the awareness that is available now, and your intention is to use your awareness for activism, fine. But your activism is grounded in awareness, it's grounded in understanding, it's grounded in profound spirituality, as opposed to activism as a means of distracting yourself from your own problems. Are you with me? An escape, right? A kind of avoidance. And then that does more harm in the world. See, that's what we call a good intention. Now, good intention, beloved, has certain kinds of characteristics that help you to identify. The first one is that it's always self-indulgent. So you become an activist because you're hoping they're going to name a school after you somewhere, or they're going to put a monument of you, a wall in Washington, D.C. somewhere, right? Or you're going to become an ancestor, and they're going to have your picture, some shit like that, right? It's ego-based. You see? you disguise it as being something you're doing on behalf of others, but really, you're doing that for yourself. We mention a person that needs to be important and significant. Very often, they will resort to activism to get their need to be significant. Man, are you with me? And important. I'm going to be right up there with the pharaohs of Egypt. You know what I mean? So, the second thing is that it not only is self-indulgent, it's counterproductive. You get the absolute opposite reaction, right? You'll do all that activism, I'm gonna save the world, I'm gonna save black people, I'm gonna save women, blah, 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 blah. You put all that into it, you see my point? And it turns out that all of that good you did is undone, and you did it for nothing. You start feeling good, did all this good for nothing, right? I wanted to eliminate poverty, right? And so I gave all of my savings to this community or to this person, and the person just shot it up and dope somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Counterproductive. Are you with me? I did all that marching and protesting and working the community on the south side, right? And they killing each other like flies. We did all that. You see? So, it can be very counterproductive. And then that will produce this feeling of good for nothing. And then you feel depressed. And then you wasted your life. You see? You become Marcus Garvey in Jamaica somewhere. So there is an activism then that is the opposite of the ego-based activism, where it's just really love for. You see, real concern. You see, real concern. Ain't nothing about you. Are you with me? You see. And it starts on the smallest basis. Are you with me? It's not in search of no recognition. You're not trying to be important. You want nothing in return. Are you with me? It's love of mankind. Does not discriminate, you see, at all. You see. That's a very different matter. So you have seen this in our own histories, you see, particularly in the spiritual realm, you see. What did Jesus say? Son of man, foxes have holes, places to lay down. Son of man has nothing. You know what I'm saying? Buddha did not die rich and nothing, you see, at all. You see. And they can handle the suffering that is inherent in this kind of activism. You see, the moment a person rejects your help, you angry. Like you said, you know, I did all this and these people ain't got enough spirituality to benefit from my activism. You see, the Buddha is not like that. You follow me? And Jesus is not like that. You know? It's their nature, it's what they do. Whether appreciated or not. You see, most activisms come to a screeching halt the moment they feel that their activism is not being appreciated by the people that are the target of their activism.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
So, false, delusional, ego trip. I'm just trying to be important. It's just trying to be important. Or perceived as being important. Are you with me? They want others to perceive them a certain way as being, you know, I'm very loving, I'm very this, I'm very that, you know what I mean? And they put a lot of energy into trying to create this image and this perception that others have of them. Are you with me? Put a lot of energy into that. You know what I mean? The activism is a manifestation of energy they putting into trying to have others perceive them as being a certain kind of way, right? It's a waste of time and energy, you see? And rather than wasting all that time, energy, and all that activism for the sake of others perceiving you a certain way, why don't you just put that same time, energy, and attention to becoming that? Are you with me? Become that. You see? That's the highest activism on the planet, beloved. Be that. Are you with me? That's what works. So, Buddha, Mahavira, Kabir, Dadu, Mirabai, Sajju, Mary Magdalene, blah, 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 blah. These names are all over the place. They became that. And that's why Buddha is still talked about 2,500 years from now. Ain't nobody gonna be talking about so-and-so activists over in Roseland. True? And what are you giving them that they need anyway? Right? Is what you offering them, your activism, is that gonna really reduce their suffering? You see? And how will you do that? You can't reduce your own suffering, so how you gonna, in your activism, bring other people's suffering to an end? Are you following me, beloveds?
Yes.
This is delusional. This is avoidance, dealing with it. And ultimately, you gotta deal with it yourself. Then you got something to give other people. What do you got to give other people? That's real. And how can you, in the activism, give what you don't even have? A pauper cannot make another pauper rich. And so the greatest thing you give them something real and give them your love. It's enough. It's enough. Love them. You see, because you gotta have the spiritual capacity to love them. Right? To let them waste your time. So forth and so on. You know what I'm talking about. You from Roseland. It's the Roseland Dom.
I'm from the west side.
No, you from Roseland. You abandoned us. All right. I think that's the last one. No, Sadenti, you have the last one.
Okay, I wanted to go back, I hope you don't mind, I wanted to go back to the forgiveness.
That's good.
Because for those of us who are compulsive thinkers,
Yeah.
and forgiveness has this mental aspect, and sometimes we have like this hurdle where you have to rationalize forgiving someone, because it's easy to like come up with all these reasons why I shouldn't forgive them, or why I should be angry, why I have a right to be angry because this person did this and that, they don't care about me, all these things. How do I rationalize forgiving them in a reasonable amount of time without festering on what happened or what I feel like they did?
That's a very, very good question, you see. And the short answer is that the rational argument that justifies the radical practice of forgiveness is that you forgive them on the basis that they are human beings just like me. It's the just like me practice. Just like me. They're trying to be happy. You see? And unfortunately, their strategy for trying to be happy involves them misusing them, abusing and so forth and so on. But what they were up to is perfectly legit. Just like you're trying to be happy, they're trying to be happy. And you can't get angry at a person for trying to be happy. It's almost like a reframing of the angry person So the angry person, you see, they acting up and you're reacting to their anger. Are you with me? And you're back and forth and so forth. But when you understand that this anger is really is here, you can't get angry at a person for being afraid. Are you with me? See, it changes it. So understanding that liberation, you see, and that understanding is very simple. This person just like you see, they're just trying to be happy. I think we were talking with the Broken Heart Cooler told them the story about the Chandala. I can't tell it again. Your mom and daddy back there, they heard, tell them the story of the Chandala, okay? But you're trying to tell them, say, I refuse to forgive you because you're not a human being like me. You see? It don't work. You forgive them because they are exactly like you. You see? The story I was telling, that particular guru is the story of Shankaracharya, right? The great Jagaguru, right? You see, the greatest proponent of Advaita Vedanta, right? World renowned, right? And the story is when he had been now honored with this recognition as Jagaguru, you see? And he went to Kashi, right? To pay his obeisance to the deities and all of that has graced him with this profound understanding. Shankaracharya's whole life was over at 34. Wow. Very young man. Conquered India philosophically, renewed the teachings of Advaita Vedanta. You see, set up 4 centers, and he had his crew with him. Are you with me? You see, all of them very heavy. I'm sure you read many things, but that was the commentaries of Shankaracharya, right? So you know firsthand, this is divine intelligence, right? Any case, so the Jagaguru, Shankaracharya and his crew, right? In Kashi, right? Now, before you go to a temple in India, the tradition is to go to the river, the Ganges in this case, and you take a dip, clean yourself, the purification. Are you with me? It's like that also with meditation. You know, you always should try to purify that mind. Maharaj used to say, read something, get your minds clean here, so that you're not sitting here thinking about all of that shit that people have done to you. You read some Rumi, you read something that's, you understand? It's a kind of cleansing. Well, Socha, this cleansing step, was pretty much understood to take the form. You take a dip in the Ganges. You're not just washing the body. While you're in that water, you're washing your mind, etc., etc. And so after taking their bath, you see, now they go back to the temple. You see, now the roads there are very narrow. You see, I mean, it's narrower than this aisle here, right? And so in one direction, here comes Shankaracharya, right? With his crew, right? And on the other end, back there where Mensa's at, you see, he just coming out of the graveyard there was a Chandala. Chandalas were the outcasts of the caste system, you know. They were lower than the sutra, just outcasts. You see, the untouchables. Are you with me? So they were called Chandalas. And so a Chandala came climbing on out of where they burned the bodies, because down by the Ganges they burn bodies too, and so forth. So he's coming out of the crematorium where they burnt up some people, stinking, you know what I mean, dirty. They would be covered with ash caused the fire, right? So forth and so on. And not only that, they were infamous for being dog eaters, so they all got a pack of dogs with them. Right? Sometimes one slung over his shoulder, you know what I mean, for supper, right? Whatever. So this Shandala comes out and he started walking it towards the great Jagadguru, Shankaracharya and his crew, right? Now, this is untouchable. Even if their shadow fall, you must take a bath. And I don't want to go back, way back to the gauges now to be running behind schedule, gotta take another bath, this damn Chandala will mess up their whole schedule for the day, right? So they see him turn the corner and say, gotcha, get out of the way. Move, go, you go back. you let us pass, right? And then Minister of the Chandala said, you talking to me? You talking to me? What did you say? Gotcha. And he's still walking toward Shankaracharya. He said, no, go. He said, you coming close, because he want to make sure you got this right. He's walking towards it. You want me to get out of the way, right? He said, well, what do you mean by that? Oh, noble Brahmin. You see? Brahmin. You the Jagadguru, you are Shankaracharya, you are the best of Brahmins, you see? You see, your intelligence, you wise, you Jagadguru, you see? What do you mean? What do you want me to do? You want this body to move from your body? Is that what you said? You said, that don't make sense, because our bodies are the same. It's just, this thing just made up food. I eat dogs, you eat, this and that, but it's just food. So you want my body to move away from your body? You see, how can my body pollute your body? It's the same thing. How can food pollute food? Right?
Yes, sir.
Or, do you want the consciousness in this body to move away from the consciousness in your body? How will that happen? There's only one consciousness. Are you with me? There's not parts. Consciousness has no part. It's one thing manifested in you and manifested in this body. It's just consciousness, you see. It's like saying this part of space wants to move away from this bottle of little space, but it's all in space. How can space move from space? Is that what you mean? And this triggered in Shankaracharya. You see, the final attainment of the justification of being called Jagadguru, because he saw his own teachings. He saw someone there when his teachings better than him. Right? And then he writes a little treatise, I can't say it because then y'all run out there and try to read it and misinterpret it. But he writes a little treatise, and he talks about because after the Chandala said that, Shankaracharya told him, hold up, y'all get back. He walked down that road and he bowed and he touched the feet of that Chandala. And he shares why he was convinced that anyone that had this kind of knowledge, this is my guru. And the text was his argument for why he did that. You see? And he recognized that this is Shiva taking the form of a Chandala to test me. You see? Om Namah Shiva. It's a profound thing. Right? So you never know when Shiva gonna take the form of somebody, son. Test your ass. Right? You wanna pass. Right? So if you can't see them as being just like you, then see them as being God. in that form.
Mm.
That is important. You can do that. We will all touch your feet. Fair enough?
Put your hand like this. A few years ago, I made a lot of mistakes and I made up my mind that I was going to do something about it. Let me tell you what I decided that I was going to do. I got to clean up what I messed up. I'm starting my life over again. I gotta clean up what I messed up. I'm starting my life over again. You know what I said to myself? I made up my mind, I ain't lying no more. 'Cause a liar and a cheater can't make it through the door. I gotta clean up, yes I do, what I messed up. Come on, y'all, sing it. I'm starting my life over again. Yeah, I gotta clean up, yes I do, what I messed up. Yeah, I'm starting my life over again. Can I tell you something that I done? Listen, let me tell you. I made up my mind, I ain't running no more. I'm going back to church. I'm gonna walk back to the door. I gotta clean up what I messed up. Yeah, I started my life over again. Yeah, I gotta clean up. Yes, I do, what I messed up. I started my life. Just one more verse. Just one more verse, y'all. One more verse. I made up my mind, I ain't cheating no more. Because a cheater, you better get to the hell. Yes, I do, yo. Can I get a witness? Y'all don't talk to me tonight. I made up in my mind, I gotta, yes, I do, yo. Hey, start my life over again. Feel like that's you, let's do better. How many of y'all willing to do better right now? Those of you that feel like that's you, let's do better. Clean up what I messed up. Yeah, I started my life over again. I got to clean up. I made up in my mind, y'all. How many of y'all have been wrong out there? Let's start. Let's start. Let's start. If you've been wrong, if you done somebody wrong, you got to tell them I'm sorry. Start. How many gonna start? How many gonna start? Yeah, yeah, yeah. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. here. Wait a minute, stay right there, y'all go down. I want you to stay there. Stay right there. Now you know what I want y'all to do? I want y'all to look, everybody, just look at somebody beside you. Say, neighbor, I love you. Say, I know you might not know me, and I might not know you, but you know what the both of us need to do? We need to clean up what I messed up. Come on, y'all. I'm starting my life over again. Come on, y'all. I gotta clean up. Let me hear you sing what I messed up. Come on, let me hear you. Starting my life over again. Let's hear it one more time. I got to clean up. I can hear y'all what I messed up. Starting my life over again. God bless you, God.
I think whisper a little prayer for me, oh baby, and let's tell all the stars above. This is dedicated to the one I love. Life can never be exactly like you want it to be. But I could be satisfied, girl, just knowing that you love me. There's one thing I want you to do, especially for me. Here's something everybody needs. While I'm away, ooh, baby, whisper a little prayer for me, ooh, baby, and let's tell all the stars above. This is dedicated to the one I love. It's you, baby. Dedicated to the one I love. Ooh, baby, dedicated to the one I love. Ooh, baby, dedicated to
That's from the west side, man.
Ooh, baby.
Long live love.